Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Diplomacy Timing Window, where the rules are discussed and our opinions don't matter. My name is The Half-Heard.
My name's Hungry Hippos.
I'm Kazadoom.
On today's episode, we wanted to talk about the 27 action cards from base game and codex that have yet to be implemented into our beloved Twilight Wars app. With the modification of the Ghost of Croesus Dimensional Splicer to fit within the existing timing window framework, we want to take a deep dive into which action cards can be implemented rules as written, which cards will need a dimensional splicer-like modification, and which cards will require some real imagination to get them to work. We're going to brainstorm how to implement the cards as close to rules as written as possible. Everyone, your feedback is always welcome, unless you are wrong, in which case silence is a virtue. And I'm just going to go ahead and say that since you don't have Kaza's mind for analysis, you're likely going to be wrong. Am I right, Kaza?
Well, you see, whenever I feel like I got the rules correct down to the last little detail, somehow a new Dane tweet pops up that says the intention was different and whatever I thought was completely wrong, and he just said how the card should be played, even though it might not be as written, but well, what should he do against the design?
Wrong. You are overthinking it, Kaza. Let's get started. All right, we're going to start with the difficult, what we think are the most difficult. We're gonna right up front, we're gonna get the real the brain twisters out of the way. So the ones that are the most difficult to implement, and by that I mean the most significant impact to flow if they were to be implemented rules as written, or that would have major changes to the rules as written if we wanted to reduce the flow impact. So let's get going. The first card we're going to talk about is Bunker. So this one reads, at the start of an invasion, during this invasion, apply -4 to the result of each bombardment roll against planets you control. So what do you guys think on this one? Rules as written, changes needed?
I think where issues pop up, and we'll probably see this in a couple of the other action cards we're looking at, is the idea of defensive timing windows. They don't exist in the Twilight Wars app. So except for when
for a reason.
Yeah, for a reason. You do it during like space combat or ground combat, you can respond, but when someone's bombarding you or playing PDS, there's no defensive timing window to negate those effects. So we looked at changing Bunker to something that would cancel hits. So the idea is before assigning hits after bombardment, roll a die, and for each hit, cancel a hit if you've rolled a 7 or higher. So it's kind of like Shields holding in that respect, but it also doesn't necessarily mean that you have to add a whole defensive timing window.
Yeah, I mean, the idea was to keep the -4 to rolls kind of intact.
Right, because the 7+ is 4.
It's like the inverse, yeah, and it scales with the amount of hits, aka with the amount of rolls that were done. So the more you get hit, the more you get out of it, and you have the advantage that you can use it after the other player rolled, so it's slightly weaker than the original version, but you can play it after you already got hit. So it doesn't matter that much. I mean, you could have played Bunker, and you might have rolled 7 once, so the Bunker was useless.
Mm-hmm. So a little bit of a buff here.
It's a little bit of a buff, and it's also not one of the strongest cards, so it has a similar effect. That's the most important thing, and it sidesteps the extra timing window needed to implement it. Just putting it into assign hits.
So speaking of the timing window, though, I just want to ask, because the start of an invasion has actually been introduced recently, right? With the new Blitz card, and there was another one I can't remember, but we now have a start of an invasion, and I guess the way Hippos kind of described is, right now it's only asking the offender and not the defender. So is it a big deal to keep this rules as written, but just introduce that single timing window for the defender to respond during the start of an invasion?
I would say for Bunker itself, it's not that big a deal because it is very strict in its timing. It's before invasion, and I mean, you just don't ask people if there's no bombardment going to happen. So that's easy to just sidestep, just saying, okay, if there's no bombarding unit in there, there's no need to open the timing window for you. But there's other cards that also work in a similar timing window-ish thing that could solve it in a similar way, and that's why I guess Bunker would be the prime example to change it.
Right.
Just
Yeah,
so other cards work in a similar way.
I guess we'll see this theme a lot of like this cost benefit analysis of keeping rules as written versus changing it, right? And some of it'll be really obvious if you have a whole number of timing windows introduced versus maybe, for example, in this one, it's one timing window introduced, right? And just trying to weigh the cost benefit of that.
Flow. You must keep the flow.
Above all else.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
The whole point of action cards, they're bonus cards. So we're just slightly modifying the bonus.
Okay, well, let's go on to another one. So the next one I had in mind was Fire Team. And this one's effect is after your ground forces make combat rolls during a round of combat. So this would be a new window, right? This window doesn't exist. What are your thoughts?
Here, I honestly think we should do something like munitions reserves, which is the ability of the Barony flagship. So after rolls, you push the use button, or in this case, the action card, and you just re-roll. Just make it exactly like munitions reserves. There are other options. What do you guys think?
I mean, the idea of just having a pop-up that pops up when you roll dice for ground combat, if you hold this card in hand, to ask if you want to re-roll and what you want to re-roll would be nice. But I think the simplest version would just make it a fighter prototype for ground combat. Just +2 straight, maybe with re-rolls attached to it.
And activated when?
Just at the start of a ground combat or start of a round of a ground combat. Just
Yeah,
make
so
it a
introducing
better
it to
morale
the
boost.
existing, yeah,
It's like a
introducing
double
it to the
morale
existing.
boost. I think that's a little uninteresting. I mean, I see the
Potentially a
reasoning behind
little
it.
too overpowered.
Yeah.
I wouldn't even say so,
Maybe.
because re-rolling missed dice.
The other option you
8
mentioned
plus, yeah,
was the secret timing window, but doesn't that become a little bit temperamental
this
or
is
problematic?
tedious, yeah. This is
Because
tedious.
the dev's got to figure out if you have the card in your hand or not, and that's probably why I defaulted to munition reserves. But a double morale boost, I don't know, seems boring.
But I do like that idea of moving cards with tedious or new timing windows into an existing timing window.
Yes.
I think like as a general kind of theme like that in terms of
And I mean,
helping the implementation.
They're doing the good work.
The only thing you lose if you make it a +2 or a reroll card is that you can't use it in a way that benefits your opponent. So you could, for instance, make a contract, I don't kill your unit, I'll reroll, you pay me something. I'll reroll my hits. That gets lost, but that's so rare and super minor that you could argue that it doesn't matter.
There's Kaz's strap brain.
What about combining the two, right? And making the secret, like you're saying, that secret window, it's still a reroll. But what if you do it instead of making a secret window after you roll, just move it to the start of combat? And I guess hear me out on this, right? Like a little bit of a nerf in a sense, because now you have to decide to use it before you see your rolls. So if you roll all zeros, then you're like, what a waste. But I mean, that's first world problems, in my opinion.
Maybe if the card would be written as like re-roll the dice that didn't get hits.
Well, I think
that's doing it before any dice get rolled. That would be viable.
Mm-hmm.
No, again,
I guess the other option, or the other reason why it's not too bad of a nerf, I was thinking, is that, well, if you play it before you roll, it's got the added benefit of, not that anyone probably would sabotage this card, but the odds of someone sabotaging it reduce drastically, because most people are going to say, well, I don't want to waste a sabotage, and you rolled a bunch of nonsense anyways.
Isn't a set what munitions reserves is? You have to use it before your space combat.
Yeah,
So,
you do.
You do.
so
Yeah.
that's why I thought that munitions reserves, the
Well, but,
same thing
yeah.
for ground combat is basically what you're describing.
It is. You're
yeah.
right. It is. Yeah. I guess just making it at the start of ground combat.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Cool.
Yeah.
So
All right. Let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, the next
so
one that goes into more of the trap card idea, I think, that we had was Ghost Squad. After a player commits units to land on a planet you control, move any number of ground forces from any planet you control in the active system to any other planet you control in the active system.
and this is
So
a
you
codex
can basically,
card.
it's a codex card. You can reshuffle your units in a system once the opponent decides where to land what. And for me, it doesn't make sense to ask players every time stuff is committed if they want to play the Ghost Squad.
yeah, that's too much.
You could set it up in a way where if your system gets activated, you can secretly respond with the Ghost Squad card. And once units are committed, you actually then play the card. So you don't get asked later, you just say, okay, I plan to play this card. Ask me later, please.
So let me
Or
see if I
do
understand
it
this
later.
correctly. You're saying you play this card in the activation of a system timing window.
But no one sees it
But
that
no
you
one
played
sees
it.
it.
It's just something you say, okay, I commit to using this card later.
And you commit it to is it a single planet or does it work for any planets in the system?
In this case, it works for the whole system once
Yeah.
somebody decides to land. Yeah.
Okay. And then so now later, you go through some space combat and all that. And now the invader wins the space combat and they go to commit ground forces.
Let's say you have a
And-
planet with 10 and one with 0, and he says, okay, I'll land one troop on the empty planet and nothing on the other. You just like shift 5 over and blow that guy up.
And yeah, so that you activated my trap card, right? Is that kind
Yeah,
of what we're
exactly.
going
It's like,
for?
oh, then you do
Amazing.
a interface similar to transit diodes and just shift your guys over.
All right, I like that. That's pretty
Yeah.
cool. That's a pretty
Oh.
unique spin, I gotta say.
The coolest thing about Ghost Squad in a normal game, and even with that implementation, is that it comes after bombardment. So if you have a PDS in the system with a ton of infantry, you can just, after bombardment, even if they have the bioweapon, you just shift them around and protect everything.
Nice.
Yeah.
I guess here's a question for that. What happens if they do not invade?
And your
Does
card
the
will
card
not get
stay?
played. No, it will not get played. And next time your system gets activated, you can do
Okay.
it again.
That's what I mean. It stays
Yeah.
it stays hidden on the planet for some future invasion.
No. You just can next time the activation.
Oh, the card goes
Of
back
one
into
of
your
his-
hands, you're saying.
Yeah.
Ah, I see.
Nah, it's a trap card. It has to stay a trap. It has to stay a secret trap.
But then
I'm gonna
it
put my
won't
foot
be a
down on this.
secret because your hand limits would be gone.
Oh.
Or would your hand limits still show as if you own
It
this
would
card in
still-
your hand?
It's still in your hand. It's just not played yet. It just automatically plays.
It's just
at a
attached,
certain
ready to auto
time.
play.
Yeah.
No,
Exactly,
can it not be used as played and then just be secretly attached to a planet? I mean,
No,
that's
Then you
because
would
that would
know.
show
But then
in
you
your
would
hand
know.
size.
It would show your hands.
People
You'd
would
see the
know.
hand size change.
yeah, and I don't mind that. You can have it like a card was played.
Nah, I wouldn't. do it.
I think it's better to keep the secret, right? Because otherwise
Yeah.
it can be noticed.
The reason
So I would say to keep
I'm
the secret.
yeah, the reason I'm being so insistent on this is because we have several other options here where trap
Alright, tell me about
potential
it.
options could be a thing.
Tell me about it. What do you got in mind?
So with reparations, the way the condition is after another player gains control of a planet you control, exhaust one planet that player controls and ready one planet that you control. Obviously, there's some issues there around timing windows for when someone gains control of a planet. If there's no one on the planet, then there's no opportunity for you to make a an action card moves. So we thought, why not have a trap card? Play it like transit diodes at the start of your turn, attach it to a planet, keep it secret, and the trap is sprung when someone pushes established control of that chosen planet.
Yep.
Pretty cool. Yeah, I like that.
That works super.
I like this
super
idea.
well,
I like this idea of trap cards. I think it adds a little bit of spice, you know, to your tactic, to your strategy.
Yeah.
You know, you need to think ahead a bit.
And I mean, the nice thing is it allows for responses that are definitely not possible in that detail, the way the game is implemented.
Yeah, it keeps it pretty close to rules as written.
Yeah.
Which is nice for sure. And I think the satisfaction that would come with this, I think would be pretty great, right?
Oh,
when,
it's so
when you
good.
get that
Absolutely.
moment,
He's just salivating. He's like, yo, go.
you're just drooling, just waiting for it to
Yep.
happen. All right.
So
Well,
public disgrace is the next one where trap
this-
card option comes in.
Public disgrace. This has got to be my favorite of the most terribly written cards. Just, what were they thinking with this? When another player chooses a strategy card during the strategy phase, anytime someone chooses a strategy card, everyone else around the table gets an opportunity to play this card. How terrible is that? Like, just in general.
Yep.
Yeah,
30
asking about
30
it.
questions total.
There,
per,
yeah,
per
jeez.
pick
Per
phase
strategy
in a
phase.
six-player game.
Even
Yeah.
in real life, how do you police that? Like, how does that work? Do you ask everyone?
You're
Every
so
time?
fast when you want to play it. You just know when you want to play it, and you toss it out immediately.
Yeah, there's no freebies and no do-overs. It's just you have to know that you're going to play it in real life.
Yeah,
But on the
I
app,
think that's
it's not
the way
possible.
I think in real life that's the way I've played it as well. Is you got to be on the ball for this one, right? This is one of the ones where you just got to be ready.
Or it's one of those where people have to be ready, and then you can still ask like the whole table, because it's a one-off. It's the only effect that happens at that time. Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it okay? Is it okay? Perfect.
So let's get on to how we can make this into a trap card.
Because I think we are all in agreement that rules as written 30 new timing windows is completely unacceptable.
Yes, absolutely.
Do you imagine? I'd stop playing. It's like this. Screw this. I'm out.
And that's not just per game. That's every strategy phase.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the trap card we suggested be during the redistribution of command tokens. You would choose a strategy card that you'd want to attach the action card to, and it triggers as soon as someone chooses that particular card, they would have to put it back and choose another one.
It's pretty interesting.
Yeah, we called it Speaker's Public Disgrace.
Nice. Obviously, I think there's no way to get away from rules as written on this one. So obviously there's going to be some pros and cons to whatever happens. But I kind of like that. It keeps the theme of the card, right? It's when someone chooses a card, it has to be put back. You're taking a little bit. You have to be a little more careful, and maybe not a bad thing, because maybe this means you need a little more diplomacy, right? Say you're really worried about the guy who's second in turn order taking a certain card, right? Well, then you better talk to the first guy in turn order not to take that card, right? Otherwise he'll spring your trap when you really wanted this trap to be sprung on the other guy. So
the strategy kicks in.
Yeah.
And the question with this also, I mean, you said play at redistribution phase. You could also keep it playable until end of agenda phase.
Right.
Yeah,
that might influence stuff a lot.
Yes,
you might not even have
true.
the same speaker as you thought there would be. So
it's true.
But that's details.
But I like the theme. I like the idea. I like this trap card theme for sure. I hope it's something that the devs might really take to heart.
For someone who's played some Yu-Gi-Oh in his time, this is definitely cool.
You have revealed my trap card. Aha!
Cool. You've activated my trap card.
this was basically the lineup of trap cards that we came up with. But there's other cards that work differently as well that would be interesting to work through. So one of them is political stability, also one of the most game-winning cards in the game, I think. So it's basically when you would return your strategy cards during the status phase, you do not return your strategy cards and keep them.
Yeah, this is definitely a great card. Definitely game winning, and
Imperial.
definitely. Yep. But again, the issue here being that you do this at the end of status, which that's a whole window around the table that doesn't exist right now.
It's all automatic.
Yep. And you also really don't want to ask everybody every time. So
So the only opportunity is play it during the redistribution of command token step and hope that the server has that memory so they can just give you back the strategy card.
Yep.
Yeah. Next,
Continue.
bribery.
Ugh.
So bribery, after a speaker votes on an agenda, spend any number of trade goods. For each trade good spent, cast one additional vote on the outcome on which you voted. Obviously,
so another new window here.
Yeah, after a speaker votes, there's no window that exists on our app. And I think we can agree we don't want it.
Yeah, I think it breaks up too, right? So the speaker would vote. You then have to go around the table asking for bribery, and then the speaker breaks ties.
Yeah.
So that does seem like quite the annoying disturbance.
So what we got to do is say, hey, just spend your trade goods beforehand.
That would be quite the nerf to the card, especially if you're early on in the voting.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would just double or triple the amount of trade votes you get per trade good and make it playable with casting a vote with your planets.
So you play it when you cast your vote, and instead of a trade good being one vote, a trade good is 2 votes. Okay, yeah, that could work. It then that has the opposite problem. It then makes it more OP when you're the speaker and you have this card.
And speaker does get enough bonuses as it is, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm.
This seems like a tricky one, actually, more so than than it appears.
Additional votes as a speaker are always nice to have, and there's another card that does a very similar thing. The Distinguished Counselor, I think, just gives you 5 votes straight, doesn't cost you anything. Well, I'm not too attached to the bribery card, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't really put too much thought into it either. All right, experimental battle station. After another player moves ships into a system during a tactical action, choose one of your space docks that is either in or adjacent to that system. That space dock uses Space Cannon 5 × 3 against ships in the active system. There is so many issues that are going to pop up here. What if you have the option of using your space dock even if against in a system that doesn't have that's not going to your particular that your system is not activated. You can still have it's adjacent, so you can still use it.
Yep. You don't have to be participating in that.
Yes, thank you.
Anything.
Yeah, it's just like
also,
you said. I think this one's a bit of a mess.
I also just realized it says uses Space Cannon 5 × 3 against ships in the active system. It doesn't even specify whose ships.
But isn't it usually it's the system of the person who's activated? It's the activating person.
I think the rules do state that when you're using Space Cannon, if you're the invader, then you're obviously using them against the ships in the system. Otherwise, it's always against the active player.
I'm not sure if that's listed in Space Cannon offense or defense, or if it's part of the Space Cannon rule. Because if it's part of the Space Cannon rule, then okay, the card works well.
Right.
But if it's part of the other stuff, then this card is a more mess than we thought it would be.
So we had to change
what can we do with this? I think
So
we're
the
gonna change it.
easiest thing is, I mean, it's not the strongest card to begin with, but the easiest way to solve this card is to just reduce the timing window it applies to. So the idea is just
So you move it to activation?
to activation. Yes, I would move it to activation. Then with
Do you
the
still-
condition
'cause-
in there for space dock adjacent or in the system. And just do space cannon 5 times 3, maybe add a 4th shot to it to make up for the lost utility, but
Okay.
that's it.
So you're saying you take away the adjacency and just make it space docks in the active system.
No, I would say you can use it on systems that are activated that contain your units and that are adjacent or in a space dock system. So you could, for instance, if you have a space dock in your home system and somebody activates Abbott's Freya in front of you and you have a unit
And
there,
you
you could
units there.
shoot. You can shoot. Like you would need
Okay,
a unit
so
to
you're
pinpoint the shot.
Okay, you're restricting it to not necessarily be anyone who has space docks and adjacent, but you can still have space docks and adjacent systems shoot as long as you have units in the active system.
Yeah, as long as you get the timing window bounced back to you for activating your
For
system.
activation.
Yeah,
Makes
if you
sense.
have nothing in that active system, then you're never
Then
going
you
to
wouldn't
get
get
that
the
timing
timing
window.
Makes sense. I
Yeah,
like it.
It's
I
like,
like it.
it's a bit like a ceasefire with a little added condition to it. And yeah.
Yeah.
All right, what's
Kind of
next?
loses a little bit of its ability, but I think not so much that it's going to be too noticeable. So I do like it.
Yeah.
I guess the other difference is just because it is notable is playing it after ships move is a bit of a card up your sleeve, right? If
Yeah.
because you play it before, it definitely would affect what a player moves, right?
Yep.
It could,
that's
like,
true.
it definitely could. So it is a bit of a nerf in that sense, but I mean,
Yeah, that's why. I mean, you could add like a 4th shot to it.
yeah, just make
to
it, like
up
you
for
said,
that.
make it a little stronger, just to make
You're
up
all
for it.
about giving the extra bonuses, eh, Kaza? You know, +2 to the to the infantry rolls instead of re-rolling.
Or I mean, what you could also do is make it just a space cannon 5/3 for all of this round. For the rest of this activation, so you would actually shoot with landing as well.
For landing as well. That's an
Yeah.
interesting idea.
So yeah,
All right. Well, that goes through all of the ones that I think we had in mind that were really going to be difficult. You know, now we'll talk about a few that we think will need some minor changes, but you know, maybe not to the extent of the ones we just talked to. So we'll call these kind of the middle ground. So I think we had a few there. We're going to go through. First one was one of my favorite cards. And I say favorite in that I think it's a very impactful card to the game. So not having it in the game is kind of a shame. And that's Parlay.
It's my favorite card. So OP, my favorite card.
Honestly, Parlay would be in the red category if the fix wouldn't be this easy and simple that we chose. Because
Okay, well,
Parlay
let's,
itself would, after another player commits units to land on a planet you control, is a very common window that doesn't exist at the moment defensively. So it's a lot of questions if somebody lands on your planet.
Another defensive
and that's
window.
definitely to avoid. So our idea was to just make it at the start of a ground combat. So, okay, you need to have at least one unit there to say, okay, you go up back to space.
Jedi mind trick him. no, you should go back.
Nothing
now.
to see here.
It's definitely a bit of a nerf, right? Because then it's not even just one, right? Think of late game when you're going to get bombarded to hell as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a nerf to this card. I don't know how I feel about it.
But Parlay, I mean, how strong of a card is it though? I've played it and I could almost hear the life draining from the person as I played it. Like, no.
Yeah. It wins games. Simple as that.
Yeah. So I don't feel bad that we've nerfed it slightly with this idea.
And I mean, honestly, just from a purely aesthetically perspective, it's like, okay, Parlay means they're like somebody's talking with each other, and if there's not two ground forces standing next to each other, who's
You
parlaying?
got that thematic.
Yeah, thematically,
Um,
that's great.
I mean, what about a trap card opportunity for this?
That would work as well. Absolutely.
Right, similar to what was one of the other ones we talked about was reparations. Right,
That
It's
was
very
when you
similar.
push established control on reparations. For
Right,
this,
right.
it would have
So
to
maybe
be
more like Ghost Squad. Ghost Squad, I think, had the same window
Sure.
after you
Yeah,
commit units.
it's like Ghost Squad. Yeah, I know that would work. That's absolutely true. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
Would be-
idea.
Then you could
Yeah.
keep the the rules as written, right?
Yeah.
I guess you just got to figure out when to use it, and I guess that would be similar, I guess, activation maybe.
And you get to
And
retain that smugness of, haha, you triggered my trap card. And you don't get to land on the planet.
Nice.
Yep.
I like
I
it.
mean, in general, with those trap cards, I think you can't make the trap setting timings too flexible. Like any time doesn't work,
Yeah,
because then the person who's
agree.
online all the time and following what the other person's doing could set the card like basically before he does his move. So I would say Parlay would be one that you set in your turn or at any timing window, but not outside of any timing window.
Interesting.
Salvage is the next middle ground one.
Easy.
After you win a space combat, your opponent gives you all of their commodities. So the idea here is, if we have secret objectives that track if your flagship has won in a battle,
Yeah.
tracking something like if you've won a space battle, getting all your opponent's commodities should be another one of those timing windows, the same way in which you'd have the timing window to score the secret objective for winning a flagship, unveil flagship.
So similar. If you're the active player, you can play it anytime after the combat ends until the end of your turn.
Yeah,
or you just say you played at the end of combat timing window. That would work as well.
Well, not necessarily, because I'm pretty sure the end of combat timing window, the combat is not technically over, and so the way it's written right now, the winner is not yet determined.
So it's that same window that you would have to do for the unveil flagship.
Yeah, which is after that, anytime before you end.
Yes.
And then if you're the defender, right, and you win, it's any time until the end of your next turn, right? So that way you can't be exploited by the person just ending their turn and you don't even get a chance to do it.
Then I would say you play it, you announce that you will play it afterwards at the end of the combat timing window and say, if you won the combat, play this card, gain the commodities from the player. Something along those lines.
Okay, that could work. So almost a trap card, right?
Yeah, but
that you add to the end of combat timing
easy
window.
Easy peasy trap card, because you
Nice.
probably won't play it if you lose the combat, but if you lose the combat, you should get the card back.
You get the card back. Yeah.
Or you shouldn't show the card. Yeah.
So another kind of in the same vein that's easy is Summit. So at the start of a strategy phase, gain 2 command tokens. Obviously, we don't have start of strategy phase timing window. So the idea was to create it with the same workings as the Lizix promissory note. So you do it during redistribution.
Or you could also do it when picking strategy cards as an alternate window.
I suppose as an alternate.
I guess the thing I don't like about these during redistribution or during scoring or during like these other times that we'd mentioned, you'd never have a sabotage window in those times. So I almost actually don't like it.
But honestly, whenever a card is played, there will be a sabotage window.
Yes.
Yes, it's automatic.
Yeah, but that's why I'm thinking, wouldn't it be better to put it into a window that would have a sabotage? And that way you're not disturbing the flow as much. Just food for
I
thought,
don't-
I guess.
I don't see what you mean there, to be
Yeah,
honest.
because every time you play an action card, a kind of a separate sub window is created so that everyone has an opportunity to respond to it.
Yes, but it's not typically, that's not typically happening in something like redistribution, right?
True, but
Yeah,
I mean,
that's
every time we do
true.
an action card, a lot. These sub timing windows are always going to happen anyway. But it would be new the first few times that it would happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
you just build around. Yeah, another interesting one that would be really fun to have in the game is reflective shielding. So when one of your ships uses sustained damage during combat, you produce 2 hits against your opponent's ships in the active system. So the only problem that I see with this card in terms of implementation is that there can be situations where you already assigned hits and then the opponent uses this ability on you, and that would need to cause another assign hit step for a player that already assigned hits.
And I think that's okay because it's really just a back and forth space battle. So, I mean, it's not like it opens up a whole new timing window. It's just really bouncing it back to that same timing window you had before.
I would almost say keep this in the before assigning hits, right?
Yes.
And you just have that check, right?
Exactly.
Is that
yes.
what you're saying essentially is that, yeah, you just make sure that you have sustained in that round, right? And then
Yes.
you'll produce 2 hits.
Yeah, so
I
I,
mean,
don't
if
see
you're-
that being an issue.
If you really fancy it, you could do it like you sustain, you have the card in hand, the game asks you, do you want to use reflective shielding?
I guess
that would be the most beautiful thing ever.
I guess the one issue though is so say the player A goes through all of their ability rounds of before assigning hits, and then they assign their hits. Now player B sustains and then plays this card and now has to
Exactly,
assign 2
that's what I
hits to their
meant, yeah.
opponent. And so now you're going back to the opponent to go through assigning hits again and before assigning hits. And
That's not that big a deal for me.
It's a one-time thing, right?
Yeah.
There's one card, so it's not too big a deal.
Yeah.
It'll be a one-off in the entire game.
And that leads us to our last one, Scramble Frequency. Whereas the rest of the 27 are easy to implement, rules as written.
Rules
so
as
Scramble
written.
Frequency, after another player makes a bombardment, space cannon, or anti-fighter barrage, that player re-rolls all their dice.
Yeah, that sounds pretty annoying.
So we could potentially just change it to during the assigned hit steps after, the bombardment, space cannon, anti-fighter barrage rolls. You just do the re-roll request at assigned hit step.
Yeah, that's super beautiful. You just, instead of assigning hits, you just play the card, ability round for sabotage, and then it would re-roll the dice and you go into the step with new dice rolls.
Nice.
All right, so concluding, in general, the idea was to completely avoid creating new timing windows. And if we create timings for players, it's always great to have players be asked at the end of some step that's already there, or use an existing timing window that's maybe a bit off in terms of rules as written timing, but works pretty well to replicate the effect of it. And I mean, in general, no rare timing windows. And for those rare timing windows, the ingenious trap mechanic would solve a lot of those problems because it would replicate the way those cards are played in a real game. I mean, it makes it slightly worse, but you have to think about them a bit earlier than you would in other games. So, yeah.
Yeah, I like the trap mechanic, and I hope hopefully it's not too difficult for the devs to implement, and maybe we'll see it make its way.
So to recap, in total we have 27 cards that are not implemented yet, and we generally believe that there are 13 which are no or low impact to existing timing windows and could be implemented rather easily if the UI allows for it. 5 can probably be implemented with minor changes to timing windows. And 9 are the really difficult ones that would significantly impact the flow and therefore would need major changes to the way they function, like, for instance, the trap card mechanic. That's absolutely not copied from Yu-Gi-Oh!
Absolutely not. I mean,
What's a children's trading card game? I don't even know. You know, some of our fans call us insufferable, but I think our win ratios really speak for themselves. I think we've done the devs a real solid here, and you know, we should give ourselves a nice pat on the back, guys. You know, we really done all the heavy lifting for them. So you're welcome.
yes, you're welcome.
Well, we've yisserled our way through the entire action card deck, which means we have spent enough time stalling in this timing window. So let's hit that pass button and keep the game moving.